up, do you? Oops. Okay.
Hello, everyone. We are live, and yes, live from a very hot, or by England standards, hot. Whereas my guest today is this is almost winter temperatures that we're experiencing here. But really excited for today's LinkedIn live session, where we're going to be talking about the hidden reasons your prospects don't buy your software. So, if you're viewing this and if you sell software, then I want you to tag any of your colleagues who are also selling software who might want to understand the hidden reasons why when you lose deals, when people don't buy from you, I might be interested in understanding those reasons and understanding how to navigate those situations a bit more. Tag them in the comments below. And as well, any questions as we go through this will be great to answer. So yeah, if you're in the business of selling software and you want to figure out and understand more about why your customers don't buy from you, then this LinkedIn live session is for you. So before we kick off, I'm going to introduce my guest today, Mr. Adam Sharrow. So Adam, over to you to let the audience know who you are, what Process Pro is all about, and yeah, a bit of background.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, so Process Pro Consulting, we were founded really to help growing businesses implement this RevOps strategy and a RevOps tech stack to enable their team to be successful. Time and time again, and as we all know, there's so many pieces of software out there in the marketplace. So what am I going to choose? How am I going to implement it? How am I going to make sure it all integrates? There's a lot of strategy now has really created a specialized role that some will say may have been sales ops in the past, but really bringing in a unified approach across what we call RevOps, being marketing, sales, and customer success is more important than ever. And so, some of the ways that we help folks is, growing business hires in that VP of sales or director or CMO. You don't want them focusing on technology and implementation of it. You want them to get the tools to enable their team to be successful. However, should they be getting their hands dirty and getting down and dirty with the data and setting up the properties? I would argue absolutely not. And so we want them to be coaching, teaching, training the team, using their expertise to be talking to prospects and customers and really accelerating that engine. And so we help companies do this by planning, mapping, documenting the processes and flows across their RevOps tech stack so that can have successful implementation.
Awesome.
And then the last piece is that enablement side. We want to be able to coach, teach, and train people to win with software.
Awesome. And it's really interesting. This whole world of RevOps is, for some, a completely new sort of realm. It's definitely an emergent job title. And I think with your experience, you've probably seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of software purchases, implementations, and that's why I think you're going to be super valuable to draw upon those insights today. So why do I think this topic is so important? Well, I think, first of all, there's so many reasons why, as salespeople, we think we don't win deals when we're selling software. And if you look in any CRM system about the reason that people put a deal that hasn't been won, you see things like budget or bad timing or, coronavirus or, all these reasons as to why we believe we don't win deals as salespeople, but actually oftentimes is the case. We actually never get to really know as salespeople the real reasons somebody or a company didn't decide to go ahead with us or didn't decide to make a purchase. And these are these hidden reasons that I found that prospects aren't often so vocal about, and really links in nicely as to, why, the real reasons that people don't buy software. And this is what I'm hoping we're going to drive the conversation for today, Adam. So maybe as a starting point, from your perspective, your experience, what are those top reasons why companies are often scared to buy software that they don't often tell the salesperson about?
Yeah, so I always love to say, kind of love, don't hate your software. As an implementer and enabler, it's important to know that software is here to help us. And it's really easy to buy those features and benefits and check the boxes that we see as sales folks. For budget, they have the pain, all those that you mentioned. But I think there's other risks that we want to dive deep on here that we need to uncover as sales folks to really learn and connect the dots to make the purchasing easy. And so for me, those I consider into three buckets. First, kind of reputational risk. And that's if I'm bringing a project up or a piece of software to implement on the sales or marketing or customer success side, I'm putting myself out there. And so from a reputational standpoint, now I have to deliver. I need to make sure that we're going to do this successfully. And I could have been in a good position in my job, and maybe I didn't have to take that risk. However, I saw a better way to do it, and I wanted to implement that.
Yeah, I'd love to dive deeper into this. And by the way, there is a problem with the system that we're using, which says that there are two Adam Sharrows on this session, but there is not some evil tricks at work. I am a different person. But
this is how you hack entrepreneurship.
Right.
You just clone yourself, and it finally happened.
But just want to dive into this reputation risk, because I find this personally really interesting, Adam. If you think about some software purchases, even to say the SMB space, are not insignificant purchases. You're talking about, maybe an average deal size that could be anything from sort of £5,000, $7,000 upwards. It's not like pocket change. And if you're an individual that has kind of put a case forward to have that level of spend over something else, and that goes wrong, there is anxieties there. There's got to be anxieties there. It's not something that, if it goes wrong, it's fine. We've just lost a few quid. There is more to it than that. So I'd love just to hear a little bit more about your experiences on that reputation and that anxiety that people have about putting their name to something which could go wrong.
Yeah, and kind of to layer into that, I think there's also executives are suffering from software fatigue,
right.
And the subscription economy is really starting to take its toll, which is requiring us as a project leader in a business to be smarter and more strategic, because maybe I only get 3 at-bats or 3 strikes, and then I kind of lose my clout with my executives on a decision-making standpoint. And so that's where that reputational risk comes in, is really thinking about, do I have a plan to do this successfully, to minimize my risk or mitigate my risk? At the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all trying to do the best we can, but we're also trying to set ourselves up for success. And you do that by managing your manager,
right,
and being strategic about those conversations. And so that, to me, is what triggers that level of anxiety that maybe we've never talked about on a sales call.
Right. And I'd love to hear anybody who's watching this, if you've ever even asked your prospect a question in a sales process about, do they have anxieties about whether this could go wrong, and what that would mean for the person, understanding on an empathetic level those concerns. I'd love to hear if you've ever actually gone to that level on a sales call. Just type in the comments yes if you haven't. type no. And from experience, and I know it's something that I haven't personally done as much as I should have, and it's clearly an important factor at play here, because oftentimes your champion is the person who's kind of put all the kind of the risk on their shoulders. What other challenges and risks do you see, Adam, or what are some of those other unspoken fears that buyers have with software?
Yeah, so I think the next one really is implementation risk. Do we have that defined plan to execute once the software is purchased? Like, can we integrate this into the tech stack? Can we make sure that we have a process defined? We know what our desired outcome is. What do we want to get out of the software? Oftentimes you have professional services within, or an implementation fee that is baked into a software cost. But for me, from my perspective, a lot of times what that is geared towards is getting to a revenue recognition standpoint, so that we can start recognizing that income on our income statement, and not necessarily with the prospect values and goals all as number one. I think that we're changing that a lot. I think software and just this buyer's journey movement is working on this, but being able to articulate how we're going to implement the software, and how you as the software company and your program links into their plan and timeline and program, I think are very important to have those conversations, because again, it's that next level of, wow, now I'm seeing kind of light at the end of the tunnel, that one, I'm not alone in this, and I've got now whatever piece of software, your team's going to work with me. You guys have checklists. You guys have the examples for how to win by using your software. And you make that clear before the purchase, because now you're decreasing those risk points, which makes it easier for me as a buyer to go to bat for myself and say, I'm going to take that chance with my VP of sales, because I can't lose now.
Right.
And I see the path.
Yeah. No, and some of this rings very true, particularly when I think about the subscription economy, and for most SaaS companies, they're not necessarily succeeding anymore just by just new business alone. Like they live and die by adoption and renewals. And again, this kind of ties not only into, from the salesperson's perspective, and doing the right thing for their company, bringing on the right customers on board, customers who they know have a route to adopting software, but also from the actual buyer's perspective. Again, it ties into that reputation risk. If they can't get adoption successfully, and if their product ends up just being that thing that sits and collects dust on the on the shelf, then again they're going to have questions asked them by their seniors, saying, what did we make that 6-figure investment for? That's on your shoulders. So I think there's an interesting dynamic there between, it's important for the salesperson to get this right as much as it is for the prospect themselves.
Absolutely. And it goes into the RevOps theme of, it's not just marketing taking care of marketing anymore. It's not just sales taking care of sales anymore. It's not just customer success. Like, if we don't have that cohesive path to a successful customer, then nobody's winning, and everybody's recognized that now, and the buyers are demanding it, right?
Right.
And so it's exciting. It's exciting that we can now bring these things up into the stations and realize that maybe in the past it might have been a little bit too much detail, or you may have created a roadblock, but it's almost becoming required to kind of uncover these hidden anxieties to kind of push deals through.
Right. And I think just connected with that, you've kind of gone through some of the real anxieties that buyers have with software, and the risks that they don't talk about. But like, what I'd quite like to look at now is, well, okay, so what's my experience of whether salespeople actually uncover these? And I'm going to stick my neck on the line here by actually saying the vast majority of salespeople, even very accomplished salespeople, never ask the relevant questions in the sales process to uncover these anxieties. And if they did, then they would have those reasons set up in their CRM about anxieties of implementation risk, or that the prospect didn't want to put their their neck on the line by worrying that this went wrong. And when I actually think about most good discovery conversations that I hear, they're really strong in the sense that they identify pain and challenges and problems that the prospect has, problems that they know that their software can solve, and their prospect would probably agree that they solves them. But the reality is that how many of those questions that we ask in a sales conversation sound like, so Adam, when was the last time that you bought a product like this, but it wasn't successfully rolled out or adopted? If anybody's ever asked a question like that, I'd love to hear that in the comments, and hear if that's even part of your standard discovery process. Please let us know if that is that. But Adam, in your experience, have you heard salespeople ask this type of question before much in that discovery part of the process?
I have never been asked that question, but just think about what you can uncover, right? We're always trying to know, yes, there's pains that we have to uncover to kind of match our features and our benefits of the software to what you're looking for. But when you ask that question, you're now uncovering that hidden feelings and truly what might be the real piece that you need to get them up kind of higher on a rating to be able to move forward. Where if they just came off of a bad implementation experience and now they're going back for round 2 and you don't talk about that, you're going to find out with the kind of tagging your CRM with wrong fit or something like that.
I've got a very real life example of this right now, where our customer success team are in the middle of, well, they've bought some software, and it's going through like they're kind of coming out of it, but they've gone through a very painful implementation of this particular product. And what's interesting is that what should have been launched 3-4 months ago is still not quite right. And if you'd asked my head of customer success, did you think that when you bought this, that 4, 5 months down the line would be in the position we are today? And probably say no. And in fact, the salesperson, maybe they foresaw these challenges, but the reality is they probably didn't. And I'm thinking now, Adam, who's our head of customer success, if he was to go and look for another piece of software today, would he have anxieties about going into that process because of the experiences that he's just came off the back of? And I think this is a really important thing, again, that you don't consider as a salesperson, as has this person just came off the back of a bad experience of implementation that's going to actually put them off buying something new, despite the fact that this new product might be the very thing that they need to solve some real problems and challenges they have right now.
Yeah, and maybe you don't want to ask the question so straightforward, because I don't want to give you the bad nightmare, right? I don't want to bring back, I don't want to scare you from buying this. However, I think there's ways that you can sprinkle this into the conversation by talking about how you're going to have a successful implementation early in the discovery process, because that could get them to ask a few more questions and get them comfortable. So I think there's ways to, I think if we zoom back, we want, and then we believe that sales teams and individuals need to have this in their tool belt to be able to talk about it. And if you do, you can start to now tweak and put it into the conversation. You can even have it in marketing, right? Like marketing, you can have materials that your prospects could be looking at on the website that's going to give them comfort around that. And then you reinforce that in the sales process by talking about it and really reassuring them that whether they have this fear or not, I mean, it'd make me happy. I mean, if I'm in that position that you just described, those are my first 5 questions the next time I start evaluating software is, how do I not make this a 6-month implementation, or how long is it going to take? Because I know for sure the CEO is probably asking, what's taking so long? I thought we have this. I thought it was going to be up. And so I don't want that to happen again.
This is, for me, I would going off on a tangent here, but I think this is really relevant. And I bring this back to how do you differentiate yourself as a salesperson? Because most salespeople aren't asking these questions. The questions that they're afraid to ask because it might put the spooks up their prospect. When in fact, the reality is, if as a salesperson you ask questions like this, such as when was the last time you implemented something like a piece of software and it didn't get rolled out as you had hoped, or uh, if if you were to tell me any anxieties you have about adoption, what are those anxieties? When you ask questions like that, you sound expert because it sounds like you're thinking about their world. And my opinion, yes, there's got to be a right way of doing it, but I still feel like the best way in sales is honesty and transparency, and is about better to get those stat stuff out in the open versus it being the unspoken thing in the room. And again, like I tell salespeople all the time, being good in sales is about just being different than 95% of other salespeople out there. And part of that might be asking these questions that you don't really want to ask because it does get exposed concerns in the room. But the more that you can get those concerns out in the open, the quicker you can actually start addressing them. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's nothing worse than not being able to respond to an objection because you didn't bring it up, right? And
Right.
so, I mean, we know what the objections are. You know what the questions are going to be. So take that and be prepared for it, and don't be scared of it. Like you're saying, ask those questions and know
Right.
that I'm going to ask that question because whether you've had great experiences or not, I am going to show you the plan to success, which is going to ease that risk.
Right. And a couple more suggested questions from me about what salespeople can ask to uncover these. And then, Adam, I'm keen to come to you more about um, suggestions and advice that you can provide to people buying the software, which is an interesting dynamic. But other questions that I think you can ask for to uncover some of these anxieties and fears in the sales process are things like, from what you've seen so far, is there any part of our technology which you feel could be complex to integrate and adopt? Like getting them to express their concerns about, maybe it's just specific elements of your product that they have anxieties about. Maybe it's around integrations, or it might be around use cases or usability. Another key question is, the the world of software buyers demands that things have to slot in as much as possible to their existing tech stack and tool set. Is ask about their current tech stack. What tools would this need to integrate with? What kind of stuff would it not need to? Would be a nice to have integration. I think buyers sometimes want integrations or talk about integrations. Some are much more important than others, but get that out in the open. And then finally, who's going to own this? The person that you're selling to might not even be the person that's going to own this and run with it. They may not have even properly thought about who is that person who's going to help with rolling this out. Is that your champion? Is it someone else? And oftentimes I found that someone else becomes the most important person in that relationship, because okay, they weren't the person to say yes or sign the contract. They're the person that's going to try and get this up and running as quick as possible. So just some questions there. I think things that you could the people watching this could start to think about asking, as we maybe stuff that you've never thought about asking in your discovery or sales process before. Adam, I'm just going to wrap up now with just, we've talked a lot about things for the salesperson to consider. I think it would be remiss of us to miss out on your experience as someone who advises and consults buyers of software. What are some of the things that those people should be really thinking about as they look to make their next software purchase?
Yeah, so I kind of want to put ourselves in the shoes of a buyer and say, if we advise people to really define their software buying strategy. Too many times, what we see is I've bought a piece of software, and now I'm defining my requirements, and now I'm defining what I want from a reporting, and that's backwards. We should be doing that first, or your buyer should have those answers. If not, then we're most likely, as a salesperson, we're setting this up to be a tough customer down the road because they're going to get surprised, right? And so some of the ways that we do this is really creating a defined and standardized process to evaluate software. And so how does that work? Your director of marketing could say, I'm exploring XYZ lead intent software, and I want to do this. I want to define those requirements. And so they'll create the business case, the objectives that they want to achieve, the goals, and really what are they trying to measure and how would we measure it? If we do that up front and work with a RevOps specialist or your internal team that's really focused on the systems, we can work hand in hand and make sure that those answers are questions before you make a purchase that may kind of put your reputation at risk or fail in implementation. I think it was funny you made the point there. Hey, it's got to integrate with XYZ, and typically what I hear, and probably a lot of salespeople hear, is it's got to integrate with everything, and I've got to have reporting for everything, and that you need to really dive deep on and understand what are their business process goals and what truly needs to connect, because I guarantee you almost every time today there's a way to make it work and integrate into the tech stack. It's just you've got to have that centralized CRM or system of record, and that's your goal as a salesperson, to focus on that and making sure that you can feed into that. So I think after that, it's the last piece of this kind of software checklist or purchasing checklist is, what is your implementation plan? So kind of what is your timeline and expectations? Who is the champion? Those questions, if you start asking in the sales process, you're making sure that this handoff is going to be successful. And the business owner or business person that's reviewing the software should have the answers to these. And so I think you addressed it well on how to ask those questions. And if they don't have these, you can coach them. And that's the cool part, is that's when you become, as a salesperson, 95% different than that other salesperson, because you've got the real interest at heart of your buyer, and you have ways to show them how you can help them be successful.
I think what's super interesting about that is all of those points that you've just made about things that the buyer should be thinking about. As a salesperson, you can just flip that into asking questions about those things, because if the buyer doesn't have the answers, what you're doing is you're showing yourself as an expert. You're kind of saying you need to be giving this some thought, and you're not there just to sell them some software and to run away. You're there as a trusted advisor, and this is really, like, for me, absolutely key when it comes to being a consultative seller, is asking the questions that sometimes prospects don't have the answer to, but they look to you for that expertise, and the questions you ask make them think, and you form much better relationships and partnerships when you get to that sort of rule of engagement with prospects. So I think that kind of brings us to the end. But this is, for me, I think, been a super interesting conversation. Hopefully, for people, particularly on the selling side of software, to just understand more about some of the things that happen behind the scenes that you rarely ever get to know about, as to some of the real reasons people don't go ahead and buy your stuff, and hopefully some ideas of how you can use that to your advantage moving forward. Adam, I'm sure we're going to do some more of these type of broadcasts moving down the line. Loads of different ways that we can and areas we can dive in a bit deeper. But for the moment, how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about how you can help tackle this particular challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, just Adam Sharrow, and then also feel free to send me a direct message there. Always kind of responding and open to helping people, and answer any questions that you have. No question's too small. I think what's great about these types of sessions and just LinkedIn in general is, everyone's here to help each other. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to be better. And that's why we're listening to this. And that's awesome. And there's a lot of great people out here. So happy to be here to help and learn more about what people are facing on the front lines.
Super cool. Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, that's all for today. We'll maybe do another one of these next week, but thanks for joining.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.